started days after he was born. And I would nurse him and everything would just come back up. I can't even say when the projectile vomiting started. And, we moved obviously from breastfeeding to some bottles to some baby food that first year. And he would do a lot of spitting up. Just the doctor was seeing him and like, he's fine, it's going to stop. And, he was still having similar issues. And of course, it went from spitting up to more vomiting. He drooled a lot and he had speech problems. So, by the time he was almost 2, we started with some speech therapy, and they said, he has, basically a delayed swallowing. He has poor oral motor. So, we're thinking, okay, all of this is related. He's not chewing his food well. He's not swallowing that well. That's causing some of the vomiting to happen. At some point, he moved over to the pediatric gastroenterologist, and there was only one that served basically all of South Florida, and it was hard to get an appointment with him. Oftentimes, we would see his PA. We didn't even see him. At some point, they started him, when he was very little, they put him on a medication that was later taken off the market. But after that, at some point, they put him on the PPIs, the proton pumps, and it did help with some of the symptoms. But what was happening is, over time, he kept having to increase them. He went to a small private preschool that his brother was at. He was in his 2s. And they were very kind, and I said, look, he has trouble with like chewing and swallowing, and he tends to throw up, but he's not sick. He doesn't, after he vomits, he just wants to go back, and so they were really, they watched him at lunch, they had him sit by the bathroom, and they were very helpful. I'm a teacher, so I couldn't work full time because I would get called a lot, to come get him, plus, I just had to be available. So I kept my hours a little shorter. By the time he hit kindergarten, his brother was at the public kindergarten. I wanted him to go to his local public school. There it became much more challenging because, so I tried to explain to them, he does have some problems with vomiting after he eats, but he's not sick, but he would be sitting in this huge cafeteria, and I remember, like, this is so sad, but so the rule in the cafeteria is you have to raise your hand if you have to use the bathroom. But he would have that time. So he was a rule follower, so he would vomit on the table. Yes. And then the kids would all make fun of him.
Oh, jeez.
So to get them to say, listen, can you just tell him that he could just go to the bathroom? He'll just go. Lots of times he'll make it to the bathroom if he doesn't have to raise his hand. But then they would call me and they would make him go home, and he said, Mommy, I don't want to go home. I don't feel sick. I said, the rule is if you throw up, you have to go home.
I mean, in elementary school, I was known as the throw up kid. Like, I would just, like, after every lunch, I would just throw up, and, like, they would come to pick me up, and I would tell my mom, like, I'm not sick. I would just, like, vomit, and didn't understand why, but I would have no symptoms, and, like, the administrators would always think that I have a virus or I have something, like, wrong with me, but I kept telling them that I felt fine. Yet, I mean, emotionally and psychologically, like, it kind of, I guess, isolated me from my peer group.
But after that, they started on the medications, and it did help. But by the time he hit middle school, after all the reading I did, I realized that. So he was getting sick then. He would get sick with high fevers, like 103, 104, and vomiting and gastric problems. And he would be out for school like 2 or 3 weeks sometimes at a time. And I would go back to the gastroenterologist. He said, no, it has nothing to do with those proton pumps. It's fine. Here's some, here, have him take these probiotics. We'll add that. Okay, all right. And then, he just kept getting sicker and sicker. So I made an appointment with immunology. Something's got to be wrong with his immune system. So he went through all that testing. I said, no, his immune system is great. It can't be great. He's sick all the time. He's sick all the time with high fevers. And he hit high school. He played baseball. He played travel baseball. He got on the high school baseball team. He was captain of the Bay team. But he would miss a month or so of school a year.
Over time, I've learned, to adapt with it. Kids understood that I was sick, so they understood me vomiting and me being sick wasn't actually, like a huge illness, but it really took the maturity of being in high school and now into college that they really understood.
So he would go to practice with 102, 103, and he would play. And he would go in the bathroom and throw up and come back and get back in the dugout. So when we finished close to the end of his senior year, I decided that he had to come off the proton pump medication because after everything I read, I said, it's got to be that, Adam. We have to take you off of it. And he was so resistant because first thing in the morning, I would hear him, he'd wake up, he'd run down the stairs, I'd open up the cabinet and take the medication because he'd wake up every morning sick. So I took him off the medication, and after about 2 weeks off the medication, he had been on it for years, and large doses of it, more than he should be taking. So what those medications do is it stops the production of acid. When you come off of it, your body, for all those years, is trying to produce acid. When you come off, it floods your body with acid. So he got, for the first time ever, like stomach pain. Mommy, I'm sick. I got to go back. No. A week into that, I took him to the walk-in clinic because he was just beside himself. And they said, oh, you got to put him back on the proton pump. I said, I'm not going to do that. I know it's a rebound effect. I want to wait it out. So the doctor took him separately because he had just turned 18 and said, listen, you don't have to listen to your mother. You can go back on the medicine. That's what I suggest. I didn't let him go back on it. 2 weeks after that, all of it stopped, and he felt great. Except that he still had the reflux, but he felt so much better. So I said, listen, we're just going to control your diet. I took him off all of the carbohydrates, and he was on basically a protein diet, no dairy, and he did feel a whole lot better. But then college came, and I couldn't control his diet at college. He was a freshman. He did what freshman students do, and he started to get sick and sick and sick and sick. He came home after his freshman year last summer, and it was new. He would go to eat and not just get reflux, but he would go out after he ate, he would go outside in a restaurant and just vomit the whole meal up. And that was happening intermittently. If I controlled his diet, it was a little bit better. Right. So that happened all summer. His brother took care of him all the time. I mean, I was at work. My mother would come down. It was all hands on deck because he would get so sick. Sometimes, my son would stay home with him, and my son would take him to the, doctor. Mm-hmm. I was at work. I think it came to a head like a week or 2 weeks ago. He went back to school, and he didn't really tell us much. He would just overdose on Zantac, Tums. He would just be taking them in like candy, candy jar. And we weren't really aware that he was doing that because he wasn't saying that he was that sick. When he came home for Christmas break, he was very sick. He couldn't, keep most foods down. He was very lethargic, and his stomach we had noticed in the summer, was very distended. He's not really a heavy kid.
Like foods that I used to be able to eat, I couldn't eat any longer. So my diet went from being, pretty small to being just plain steak and plain chicken, or like with any type of sauce. And if I drank anything other than water, I would be like so drastically sick that I wouldn't even take any chances. So at lunch, I would just get plain steak and plain water. But now, even going into my second semester of college, like even eating steak, I would throw up no matter what. I have a girlfriend, and even in front of her, I'd have to, be sick, and it was, it was just really an uncomfortable situation.
So we took him to a doctor that my husband just was friendly with from like racquetball there. Let's go over there. So we went to him in Miami. He was very nice. He said, and I had done, because I read everything. I told him, I said, I think it's SIBO. I think that's maybe what he has. Can we test him for that? Oh, I don't even know where you can test around here for that. I never have it tested. I'll just give you the antibiotic for it. Okay. He goes, there's really no downside. All right. I was happy to get the antibiotic. So he got back to school, and he was so sick. So sick. So here I'm 4 hours away. I'm calling up in Orlando, and I get a gastroenterologist. Say, Adam, take an Uber and go to this doctor, because that's the soonest appointment I could get. I don't know how good he is, but go over there. Doctor gives him 4 medicines. 4. One of them is Klonopin, which I wasn't even familiar. I'm looking it up. It's a medication that you would give for anxiety. Very addictive, extremely addictive. He says, Mom, when I take that, I can eat. I'm like, oh, maybe, maybe it's anxiety. Maybe all this time it's anxiety. I'm like, I don't understand how it would be anxiety. He had it when he was an infant, but he said, no, I feel really good. I could eat. Meanwhile, he could barely, talk to me because he's on this medication that's like Xanax, So the doctor says you can take 1 at night. He said, Mom, I feel great. I take it, and a few minutes later, I could eat. Okay, good. Then he calls me a couple days later, but Mom, I need to take it in the morning too, because if I don't take it in the morning, I can't eat. So I'm going to call the doctor and see if I can take it in the morning too. Well, Adam, it's a highly addictive medication, and how are you going to function, taking it in the morning and going to class? So the doctor says, yeah, you could take it in the morning too. So takes in the morning, says, yep, I feel great, I can eat. But then 2 hours after he would take it, after a couple of days, Mom, it only lasts for a couple hours, and then I'm really sick.
Every time they just said that, here, take more medication, that this is going to help, but yet over time I was self-medicating myself to the point where I just couldn't handle it anymore. Eating and throwing up was just a commonality of my everyday life.
I drive up with my brother. I said, we're going to come, we're going to pick you up. We get up there, and without the medicine, and I'm saying every 2 hours, he's so sick, it's scary. Passing out sick. So we throw him in the car, and we have to drive. So we're going to drive from Orlando to Cleveland Clinic, which is back down where we live. Every 2 hours, we had to stop and give him another pill, just to get him to the emergency room. We get to ER, because we're heard Cleveland Clinic, they should be able to help him. Maybe they have the gastro on call, he'll come and see him. They see him, and they say, and they give him Ativan through the arm. And when they give him the Ativan, all the symptoms stop. They say, look, we've seen this before. It's anxiety. You see how he's doing when he's on the Ativan? I'm like, yeah, he does, he looks pretty good. He feels good. And they say, we can't keep him. His, vitals are good, and his urine is clear, blah, blah, blah. We have to send him home. Like, so they gave him a script for Ativan. I just keep him on the Ativan? Yeah, put him on the Ativan and make an appointment, to see the gastroenterologist. We can't keep him here. We can't have him see the gastroenterologist unless he does a scan, which has a lot of radiation. And we don't really suggest that, because that's a lot of radiation for a 19-year-old. Okay, all right. So we go home, and we give him the Ativan, but it's the same thing. He needs so much Ativan to knock him out, to where he can't function. It's not like 0.5 where he could, no. The next day, he's so sick, I had to take him back to the emergency room. It's not even 24 hours. They yelled at him in the emergency room. Stop the drama. Stop the burping. It's his fault. And I'm thinking it's his fault too. Me, I don't know, but I was like, maybe my child is something's wrong with his head. Maybe there's something wrong with him that we just didn't want to see. Maybe he has a mental problem that's causing all this, They would not do anything. They would not let him see the gastroenterologist. They just upped the appointment so that he'd be seen like in, a week instead of 2 weeks. And they discharged us. I brought him home, and that's when so then my sister-in-law says, my neighbor has a good gastroenterologist. Take him there. I call up the next day. I take him to another gastroenterologist.
I just wanted this problem to be over, and until 2 days ago, my hope was, it was under zero. I've been to, like I said, gastro after gastro.
He says it's a motility issue. He feels his stomach, whatever, doesn't do any tests, puts him on 2 different medications. One of them keeps your food down, which is has a lot of side effects. I'm aware of that one. And the other one I had never heard of, but it was a medication that you give him at night. And it's supposed to, according to the doctor, have the brain communicate with the stomach and fix the problem. I give Adam the medicines. Adam says, I can't get out of bed. I just want to sleep. My kid, who was sort of hyperactive, didn't want to get up. He could eat a little bit, but felt horrible. He said, Mom, I feel like I'm jumping out of my skin. I just want to sleep. Just let me sleep. All I want to do is sleep. So that's when I had already been communicating with Dr. Noor. I was reading everything. I'm a member of all these boards, Gastroparesis, reflux, you name it. Yeah. I read everybody's comments from all over the world. I'm trying to find someone who sounds like my son. So I see the Dr. Noor, he does the Stretta procedure, which I thought maybe, that's a really good thing for my kid. He comments on everybody's board. So it's a, Facebook board. So I go on and I try, if you know Facebook, I request for him to add me. I'm like, he's never going to add me. He doesn't know me at all. Why would he add me? He adds me. And I send him a direct message. And I said, I explained some things, and he sends me back this long list of things that, has your child been tested for this? No. He hasn't been tested for any of it. I don't even know. I'm looking them all up, whatever all those things are, because I don't even know. I took that list, to the one gastroenterologist in Miami, and asked him about this, but anyhow, most of them don't even know. But that's how I got the SIBO, but from him. So that's when I went and said, I think he has SIBO, That was because of Dr. Noor had mentioned and I had read about it. Why would my kid, who's like my husband, happy and full of life, have an anxiety disorder? It just didn't make sense to me. I spoke to Terry, and she helped me to, first he wanted him to have the gastric emptying test in Florida. So she was helping me. I said, where do I get it done? I'm trying to Google it. I don't know. I don't see it. I don't know how to make an appointment. She was looking at her end, and I said, listen, right now he can't even drink water without vomiting. I can't get him to eat or drink. And that had been days. He's not eating or drinking. I said, listen, can you just come up there and do the gastric emptying test up there maybe? She said, I think that's a good idea. And she comes back, she said, you know what, we're going to change your plans. He's going to come up here tomorrow, and he's going to do they're going to scope him again, and they're going to do this other test, which I never heard of. Monday night, we flew out. Monday morning, I spoke to her. Monday night, we flew out. And I wasn't sure if Adam was going to be able to make the trip because, he hadn't been eating or drinking, and I wasn't sure if he was going to vomit. He took some Zantac, which, doesn't work that great, but because he'd been, abusing it for years. Took some Zantac. I gave him, some rice cake, and we crossed our fingers that we can get on the plane and he wasn't going to puke. We made it. We got here. Got an Uber from the airport. checked into a hotel near here, and the next morning he came, Tuesday morning, and he had the test at 8 a.m. Tuesday morning.
Yeah, my mom didn't even think she would be able to get me on the plane. I was that sick. I couldn't get out of bed. This was like going into the last 2 days before we were leaving. My mom was researching feeding tubes and motility disorders. This was the first time my mom like looked at me and she just didn't know whether I was ever going to be able to go back to school. Granted, just going back next semester, which I planned on. When Dan came in and told me that he found something, I just couldn't believe it, because after 20 years, not one doctor's ever told me they found something. And when he said that they had a blockage and that they were going to be able to fix it in 2 to 3 minutes, I was just ecstatic from hearing that. But at the time, I honestly didn't believe that that would actually fix me. I just couldn't think that from the next day I would stop vomiting. I just thought that it would be a long process and this was just the start of a major issue. But 3 days out, I feel amazing. I haven't vomited. I could breathe like every other human being. It's just, I can't tell you how grateful I am of Dr. Noor. Without you, I mean, I could be sick. This probably would never have gotten diagnosed. This was my last hope, and I wasn't expecting anything coming up here. I've read reviews about you, but I've been to some of the best gastros that I thought in all of Florida. And I didn't honestly think that anyone could see something that any other gastro couldn't see, but wow, was I surprised. And to that, I will forever be grateful. Thank you, Dr. Noor.